Underneath the root barrier, we've got a drainage layer. One of the brand names is Inca Drain, and the best description of it, if you guys haven't seen it, it's kind of like bubble wrap, but instead of the bubble part being solid, it's like window screen fabric. And that means the water can flow through it, and then it flows laterally across the roofing membrane and goes to the drain. All of our roofs are designed to hold about 80% of a standard Iowa rain. So for us, that's a 1-inch rain event. So we figure it's going to hold 0.8 of an inch of rain for each square inch. Per square inch can hold 0.8 of an inch of rain per square foot, and then we calculate it out, and I've got this whole calculation that tells me how much water we're keeping out of the storm system by doing it. And it was really important for this project because this building flooded. The basement level would flood in bad rains because what was here before was this big concrete amphitheater that faced that way so that your back was to people coming up the ramp and then down this sidewalk. And then there was this bridge, which is what we're standing on, that linked the sidewalk to the main College of Design. So we retained the use of that concrete bridge to help it work at level and decided to use it to show off the roof instead of tearing it off. It just helped us all the way around. But the rain through here, because of the courtyard, it would all flow down into this lower level. It would overflow the intake that happens at the loading dock, and then you would get water that would flow into the painting studio and the pottery and the metals in the wood shop. So what we know that it was excess both between the green roofs and then the detention cells that we have out under the paving out in the courtyard. Underneath those, we've got 6 feet of clear wash gravel under there to hold. It's basically a giant detention cell, and we then take that storm water and slowly put it into and pipe it into the storm system. And the key for this is in 2010, when we had flooding in 28 buildings on campus, and Hilton and Lead Rec and all these others were underwater, there was no water damage in this building except on the south side of the building for those offices that are underneath that attractive area down there. They had water damage and we didn't, and we would have normally seen water, a couple inches of water in each of these studios. So for us, it was a really good thing. So this is more of our moisture shade tolerant plantings that we have on here. Then we've got the flat roof up above, which is a standard standard roof, and it's got about 8 different sedum types on it. It also has ice flower, prairie drop seed, prairie cone flower, and blue grama is the grass that's up there. Then up on the sloped roof is our arid roof. And so there are not as many sedums on that roof because it's at an angle, it holds no water. But we're growing prickly pear. It's a native to Iowa and it thrives up there. It's actually very happy when it gets up there and gets blooming. It's one of the things that did well. The last 2 years, this roof's been okay, but the upper roofs really suffered in the drought. This last summer was okay, but the 2 years before that, we didn't get here in time with irrigation. With our roofs, we found we need to keep a 1/4 inch of water, equivalent of a 1/4 inch of rain every 2 weeks on the roof. Especially if your temperatures are going to be getting up above 85, because you'll just make it. And what happened the summer before last is we missed it. We just didn't get up in time to get the roof irrigated. We're going to have to replant it again next spring because the grama didn't survive. The sedums went dormant. They're okay. It's not great up there, but it's pretty spotty.
Is there any chance that you would change the plant palette at this point now that you've seen how the original one performed? Because I know some of the Christian plants, there's some really interesting alpines and things.
Yeah, I mean, we probably need to take a look at it, and part of it comes into how much money the university is willing to spend to replant up there. The grama is relatively easy because that's just seeding it in. Everything else at this point, this roof was originally planted by cutting, and nobody believed that it would take off because when you cut these roofs by cutting, it's pieces of sedum about that long, and it looks like McDonald's lettuce, shredded lettuce all over the roof. And 2 weeks after it went down, we already had root growth and plants actually growing upright versus just laying there on the growing media. And when this roof was initially planted, it was the perfect planting season because it was not a hot summer. We had rain pretty much consistently. We planted it in May. We had rain through June and July. August didn't get really hot. And so it was, all of the really nice pictures of this roof were all taken from that first year. I mean, there's times, there's a couple of them that are just gorgeous that are taken, that Cameron Campbell took at an angle almost laying down, that it looks like you're out in the prairie because you have the grass, you just have the doghouse popping up out of there like it was a sod house. So.
What do you think about the moss?
I love it. I think it's fun. I love it when it blooms. And there was some concern about, well, we need to get rid of it. And in talking with one of the experts we had at the time, the argument is it's green, it's a plant, it's growing, and it's doing what it's doing to keep the growing media on the roof. And that's really the reason it's green. The reason it's planted is to keep the growing media on there so it protects the roof. And I just think it's fun. And to me, I don't mind it because it helps choke out some of the sedum sexangular that wants to take over this roof. One of the things we found is that it's becoming a monoculture in sections because that particular sedum is taken over and is very hardy. And then some of the other ones are happier out where the roof is a little bit drier.
In that respect, it's sort of like when you do prairie borders with things that reseed, and for years later you've got Heliopsis and all the asters you could ever want.
And they've kind of choked out everything else.
Are not there.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one of the logics. Julie's got the plans for State Gym, and then we'll go over to ABE, and at ABE, the designers did these wonderful patterns in the roof. Well, that's great, but chives aren't going to grow where you tell them to grow. They're going to grow everywhere. The hens and chicks that are in State Gym, the State Gym roof is a large rectangular palette, and then it just has these diagonals of plants that run through it. It's interesting. The hens and chicks will stay where they're supposed to be. I would have never thought to plant hens and chicks on a roof. The prickly pear will end up going where it wants to go. The chives are going to go everywhere. I mean, they're down here. But at ABE, it's almost a tapestry pattern that they tried to do in Grama. And it didn't really come up well this year, but you just sort of look at it going, it's not going to last.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll just pop over to ABE and go up on that roof, and that one's more fun. ABE was planted in June. End of May, early June. It was all done by cuttings. You can get a real good sense of what the growing media is like because it's exposed here. It got exposed because the roof downspout from the atrium dumps right there. And so when it's unloading everything along this roof, comes to this side, and so all of the water that falls on that roof dumps out, and so that piece comes in here and it completely scoured this. We got it planted about a week before we had a 2-inch huge rain event. And it stripped everything through here. I laugh because if you were to move some of the really nice clean white rock away, you'd see all of the growing media that got washed out of the beds and all of the plant media. A month ago, all of this area was full of growing media in Grama because it had all washed in here and taken growth, taken foot in the rock. And then you can see where it washed down over in that corner, and a lot of it washed over that way, and we had it growing in between the pavers on the rocks, just everywhere. But as a whole, this roof came through pretty well for its first season. I mean, it really was. This one was solely cuttings, and then the Grama was seeded in. As you can tell, kind of like by what I said, that they tried to do a paisley pattern. It will probably be visible for about 2 years before the Grama itself spreads everywhere else. And then we still do have weeds that have picked up and just come in airborne, and some nice crabgrass in places. one of the things that's been interesting on watching our roofs grow is watching the biodiversity piece of it. It'll be fun to watch this one over time. Last summer, I was working with a LA grad student who was looking at biodiversity, and the 2 of the 5 roofs he was looking at was the King Pavilion and the State Gym. King, we didn't collect that much on it. It's so wide open without any parapets, and it's incredibly unprotected. So we didn't catch much in the world of biodiversity. State Gym, he would sit in the 4th floor of the residence hall and watch life. There were birds, there were butterflies, actually he got at least 1 hummingbird sighting up there, and then we'd climb up on that roof with a bug catcher and go catching bugs. And he got at least, he's thinking he was working with entomology to still identify the flies, but at least 5 varieties of flies that he could figure out that they look different. But we caught a stink bug, and that was fun. It's like, we got a stink, got excited about finding a stink bug up on a roof, because that, the State Gym roof, if we walk back out, you can see it out over there. It's still up there. We'll point it out when we head back in. But as far as diversity, there's not really much there. It's kind of in the middle of a parking lot. And so to get that kind of, the bees that we had were incredible, just because we would hit it at times when everything was flowering. So it was really nice just looking at the insect life. It'll be interesting to see how this roof does when it blooms. The sedums that we have up here are smaller and more low profile than we have on State Gym. And I think that's a part of it is State Gym, even though it doesn't have a parapet as high as this, versus King, it does have a parapet, so there is some protection. One of the things we have to be concerned about on any of the flat roofs is dieback and scour from the wind, and that's one of the issues with King, which is if you look at it from above, why there is such a wide band of gravel around the outside edge. And we do see some dieback on, it's the west corner, but southwest if you consider the piece that faces town planned north. That building is turned exactly 45 degrees to north. So it's really the west corner of the building scours badly from the wind, because it comes up across the top of the woods at Emma McCarthy Lee Park, and it's right about the same height as that roof as it comes through across the top. But I mean, this roof's done pretty well, and I'm excited at really 6-month growth. The big thing that we have when we plan our new roofs is that we've written the warranties in such a way that we need to have we've gone from 95% coverage was King Pavilion after 1 year. We've gone to the point where 85% coverage after 2. And what we've been finding is that the first year, we had a lot of dieback on Troxel last year because the winter was so bitter cold. The plugs just were heaved straight out of the ground. It didn't work. I've actually ABE was done with cuttings, King was done with cuttings, State Gym was done with plugs, Troxel was done with a plug roof. So of our 4 new ones, we've done both, and it just is dependent on the survival rate. Right now, our cut roofs is the way they've been planted as cuttings have got a little bit better rate of survival than our plug roofs. Part of it is I had to really educate myself on looking at what is the best time to plant these roofs, and some of the studies that are out there, especially out of Michigan State. When we first started, they were really the only ones who had any kind of good study of showing that if you looked at a roof planted in May versus one planted in September, the one planted in May is irrigated initially just to get everything established, and then it just is let go in the summer. The one that was planted the ones that were planted in September were watered clear up until freeze. You had a 35% dieback rate in the roofs that were planted in the spring, and they had an 85% dieback rate of the things that were planted in September. So our big push, and my big push, has been to get us on these roofs, to get them planted in the spring so we can give them the summer growing period and well into fall to get established. Because where we didn't do that, Troxel was planted a little late. Yeah, it wasn't irrigated the way it should have been, in my opinion, when it was planted, and it heaved out. I mean, it was just dead. So But in this one, you know, we did set it up here. We've got the walking paths through it. On any of these roofs, you can walk on them. I mean, they're sedum. You're not gonna hurt it. You don't want to have a party on it, but you know, they're a good sturdy roof and they'll last. That's why sedums are a good plant to use, because they're very tolerant of abuse.
Do you recall what the design rule was for this group? What was the number that they think was too much?
As far as structural loading,
Yes.
no, I don't. I do know that it's almost a wash weight-wise in a rock ballasted roof versus a 3-inch growing knee roof. So as far as overall weight, the big difference is that with the green roofs, we get an additional water load on it that you don't have in a rock roof. But it's not that much more significant, because we traded out a roof over at the Memorial Union. So if you're Memorial Union going from the parking deck to the hotel desk past the Multicultural Center, there's that green roof out there. That's a tray system. We installed that at Visha 2 years ago. That had been big river rock ballasted roof that was up there, and it was just ugly. And the horticulture club raised the funds and went to GSB and got funding to turn that into a green roof. And it looks a whole lot better. That one was our first tray system. And the nice thing about tray systems for us is that they go in and they are established when they plant. You know, they're at least 2 years old when they go in. They've had 1 year in a greenhouse and 1 year to be finished off outside. And they're dense, and you don't really need to worry about them as far as weeding as much as you need to do the brand new roofs that we're getting, because they're already in and very, very dense. We've got 2 small tray system roofs on this building I'll show you when we go out. And we put those where they're highly visible. This roof isn't visible, but we're using this for stormwater. One of the caveats of building this complex on this site was stormwater. We couldn't discharge any more off this site after the construction was done than before the construction was done, and this was a band practice field. So there'd been a shed or something here a long time ago, so it wasn't really a greenfield site, but we couldn't put any more into the storm system. So that's why we've got the green roofs, to try and retain water. It's why we have a water reuse system in the building, that we capture the flat roof and the footing tiles for flushing toilets and urinals. And then we've got the entryway, which is another detention cell. It's permeable pavers on top of permeable concrete, and then another 6 feet of clean washed gravel. And the really nice thing about this is I was doing a tour with Makesh's class, that architecture studio. It was absolutely pouring rain out that day when we came in, and you walked out, and the sidewalks are giant puddles of, you know, trying to not get wet when you walk through. And as soon as you hit the pavers, it was dry, because it goes down through. It's just like the courtyard outside King Pavilion, and it really does make a difference. It's just a lot nicer. And they're really, as you're out here, they're really only just a couple penetrations through these roofs, and they're vents for sinks that are in areas down below. Because I know there's a conference room in one floor on that corner, so that's a vent from the sink there. Those 2 are vents from the sink. So that one. As you go further that way, you start to run in, whether it's exhaust out of fume hoods or toilet room stacks. So don't breathe heavily over those 2 right there. That's the price. Any questions on this one? You guys are free to walk around. Stay on the pavers. Stay on the stone if you want. Just because we're trying to baby this thing through this fall. So I'll say we'll give you a couple minutes to walk around, take a look. If there's things you want to take a look at, go out. Me, went in. It was nice because we got columbine in there. There are a couple ferns on both sides. This side's not going to be as successful with the ferns because this gets a lot more baking light. The one on the other side will do much better because it's in shade. But they're both the same plant mix, so that will be just a fun study over time of what's been successful on this side and what's successful with its twin. But you can just start to see some of the mixing, and what you're seeing out there is growth. We're designed to be in those locations. They'll probably spread.
Who grew these? Was this the
Teresa?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
This is, okay, this is live roof.
Yeah, this is live roof.
Yeah.
I keep going. I've been seeing Teresa at things for years, and I keep going, well, Teresa's company. Miles
Yeah.
worked for her for summer.
Yeah. What company is that? Live Roof.
They're out of the Quad Cities.
Oh.
And the beautiful thing about these is that they are greenhouse grown for a year to get them fully established, and they can be babied as the trays, and then they harden off a year on the ground outside. And so it's not a shock to them the first winter that they go through. And considering last winter was as bad as last winter was, I don't think anything is going to hurt these.
Well, also, since they're in Davenport, they're not just acclimated, they're acclimated to our climate.
Yeah,
Our specific climate.
so it makes a big difference.
So this has been in for.
This went in this spring. So this went in end of May, early June,
Okay,
which is why it still had some of the spring ephemerals in it when it came up.
okay.
It was just like, ooh, Colomite.
Can we open that long enough for
Him to
you
get
to take
a
a picture?
Yeah.
Of the real roof?
Mm-hmm.
Trailers cost more than other.
Yeah, tray roof, we typically see not quite twice as much, but there is definitely, I'm more watching other people who live here. There's definitely a price increase for them, but it's the fact that you're getting something that's fully established. You don't have 2 years of maintenance trying to get it this lush. I mean, that's the difference. Both these roofs went in about the same time, the upper one and the lower one, and this one looks like it's been here forever. And that is the beauty of a tray system. For Iowa State, it's monetarily driven. I would love to be able to do this everywhere. We just can't afford it.
So with the traces, is the success rate higher? And would that off cost the cost of replanting the roof?
It would. The problem is a lot of the time we're dealing with first cost, not life cycle cost. And sometimes we can make the arguments with individuals and individuals and departments on campus to look at the life cycle cost. In the long term, it will be cheaper for us to do this. Mark Chittister is a prime example of it. He was in the president's office when we redid Morrill Hall. Morrill Hall has a fake slate roof on it. It looks like slate from the ground, but it's recycled rubber. It's all old tires. For $25,000 less, we could have put a standard shingle roof up on there. But he sat there and went, this fake slate, the rubber roof has a 50-year warranty. A regular shingle roof is 20 years. At $25,000 in 20 years, we are going to spend more than that just to scaffold the building to replace the roof.
Yeah.
And so it's nice when you have people who can see that long run impact cost. For me, I think we're going to be seeing more green roofs on our campus, and we're going to be seeing, I would really like to see more water reclamation, using it for, flushing, because I firmly believe that water is going to become a very expensive resource. You look at what drought did to us in the last couple of years, and we only used, when BRL opened, to the point that the cistern system was connected with this building when it came up, they only used 130 gallons to flush the toilets and the urinals in that building of potable water. They spent almost 300,000 gallons of reclaimed water. It's expensive. Water's gonna become expensive.
Well, in Ames now, you're charged for your sewer, the water that goes down the drain.
Yeah, I saw that on my bill. I was like, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I
Well, it's
was
always,
saying that. I was in the
it's
parking.
always been, the bad thing for us that the city, because the city doesn't meter that,
Right.
the downside is that with our reclaimed water systems in the 3 buildings that we have them in,
You don't get credit?
we don't get charged for the sanitary, because that stuff's is just being flushed and going out, so we're not being charged for the water use that it would take to flush. They haven't gotten that smart yet.
We won't tell.
But, what we're doing is when we're putting then water back into the system, it's relatively free water, because we've just been harvesting it, so.
So I asked Mark if he would do a tour for us later in the year, because I have some numbers from the National League of Utilities
Mhm.
about how much water buildings generate and how to link these systems, the building and the landscape.
The biggest part for us and the biggest problem that we've had with our reclaim systems is in the state of Iowa, our code interpretations are split. Building code is through the code official's office with the exception of plumbing. That's through the Department of Public Health. With these cisterns, this is the first reclaim system in the state on our campus. They'd never run into this before. When you deal with public health and you're dealing with large 50,000, 75,000 gallon cisterns, they're used bodies of water. They're used to seeing swimming pools. Well, most other places where they do this, they just take the water and they run it through pipes that's marked and it flushes. Here, we have to collect it. We have to have it on a recirculating pump that runs 24/7. We have to send the water through a UV light to kill any biologicals. And then we have to dye it with food-safe dye. Well, we have to dye with dye. Because, you know, the argument with public health is, well, they need to know that the toilet water is not safe to drink. And our logic was, this is a college campus. We don't have many pets drinking out of the toilet, nor do we have many students who use that water for anything other than the function of the toilet. Oh, no, and so the downside is that we have to now put in dye in this water that's being flushed that then has to be removed at the water treatment plant when you're dealing with the sanitary lines as you come out. Now you've got an additional compound that's been added to the water that's got to be stripped before it's dumped into the streams. So it's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
and they won't let us use water, groundwater, or wash off. So we have to get it from the roof and we have to get it from the footing tile. We're not allowed to use anything that's fallen on the grass. It might pick up things, which then again, people might drink it.
Based on its processing, is it potable water though?
Pretty much. You know, if it was an emergency, yeah, you could probably go ahead and drink it. It's gone through a UV filter. It's killed its biologicals, but it's not been, you know, there's no chlorine. It's not been treated with any chemical to kill anything. So it's just sort of ridiculous. It's my other pet peeve.
Yeah.
So
You get funding for these routes. You guys try going through STARS.
STARS doesn't give money to anybody.
Oh, okay.
STARS is solely just a rating system. The nice thing about it is that STARS rates the overall, the three-legged stool of the university, the academics, the operations, and the investments. And so the ASHE program is really nice that way, and we did very, very well when we went through it this year. You know, it's kind of to the sustainability of education as lead is to how we evaluate buildings, so. Yep. I didn't want to do that. Claim that. So, any other questions?
What building was it you were talking about that they only had to use 130 gallons? This building?
Biorenewables, which is that building of this 3-building complex. You've got the Biorenewables Research Laboratory, you have Sukup Hall, and then you have Elings Hall. I think this is Elings and this is Sukup, or it's the other way around. To me, it's just the ABE complex.
Yeah.
And then, so now that we've got everything metered, we'll start tracking the amount of water that they use as a complex. So it's kind of,
It's very cool.
I wish I had more time to do analysis.
Yeah.
Not too much.
So
Yeah.
all of the roof is either green or catching?
On these 2 buildings, they're either green or it's catching. And even the green roof, the water that does flow off of that is going into the containment area.
How does that, when you catch it, is there like a filter right that to trap for anything?
I mean, they're on any of the roof drains, you've seen them, they'll catch the big stuff because it's kind of like a giant sieve that sits on top of them. So it'll catch twigs and leaves, but anything else, they're going to get caught downstream down at the filter before it goes into the big cell.
There's a sand filter in the basement. It goes through that, and then it goes through a UV filter, and then it goes out. And then it gets metered on the way, so they know how much they're getting, and then the pipes that go to the toilets are metered, so they know how much.
In these big rainstorms, can that back up?
No, it's got to fall. Once it's full, it'll default, it'll close a valve, and then they'll go out the downspouts. You'll see, around, I think it's around the base of a
There's a
lot of these
scupper.
buildings. There's scuppers, there's the lamb's tongues that are some over at the King Pavilion. So that's when we know that either something's blocked or the cisterns are full, because you just see it coming out like it would on a normal building.
But in terms of the sand filter, like it can go through the filter.
It's gonna take a lot to fill up that sand filter. And it's not it's something that we can actually look at, so if you need to look at it, you can go through, and if there's a lot of leaves on the top of it, you just kind of rake it and collect it and throw it out. All right. Well, thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much. No
Thanks
problem.
for coming today.
Yep.